And welcome back to America Right Now. Police reform has become a hot topic in Congress. A bipartisan group of lawmakers is looking to help advance a bill named for the man at the center of the conversation. National correspondent Logan Raddick has more from Washington, D.C. Logan.
That's right. The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act is a top priority here on Capitol Hill. This week, Floyd's brother and the family attorney Ben Crump sat down with Democrat and Republican lawmakers to discuss the bill.
These families got to tell their truths. Our family's blood is on this legislation.
Crump and Floyd spoke with President Biden, who's urging the Senate to send him a bill to sign.
We can enact rational police reform. We can root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system.
The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act includes significant reforms. It would set up a national registry of police misconduct to hold officers accountable. The bill would also ban racial and religious profiling by law enforcement at the federal, state, and local levels. It would end qualified immunity, which protects officers from civil lawsuits. Plus, the bill lowers the standard to criminally convict them. Crump and Floyd pressed their case with leading Democrats, including Senators Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Dick Durbin, and Congresswoman Karen Bass, who wrote the bill in the House. And they also held a meeting with Republican Senators Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham, who Crump says promised to stay engaged.
They listen intensely. It got very emotional at times, and they promised them that they were going to try to make meaningful legislation.
And Senator Scott is in the midst of ongoing talks with Democrats on a path forward. The two parties still have strong disagreements on several points in the bill, but the clock is ticking. Democrats want to see an agreement by May 25th, which will be 1 year since Floyd's death. Back to you.
In his joint session to Congress, President Biden called for the package of that George Floyd Police Reform Act before the end of May, the one-year anniversary of Floyd's death. That bill was passed by the House in March. It's now being debated along with Republican proposals for reform, as Logan mentioned. So what is in this bill, and how could it impact public safety and policing in America? It's the topic of our Thin Blue Line segment this week. Let's welcome retired U.S. military intelligence officer from the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, Steve Rogers. He's also a retired police officer from New Jersey. Steve, good to see you, and thank you very much for your service. So,
my pleasure. Thank you.
Let's talk about this bill that President Biden supports and certain components of it which are raising some concern. I'd like to get your comments on each of these. First, ending qualified immunity for police officers and making it easier to sue them. Talk to us about that.
Well, I could tell you, to begin with, a lot of political theater and smoke and mirrors. I heard the same song and dance in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. With regard to the qualified immunity, this is going to cripple the ability of police to do their job effectively. Frankly, they want to hold police officers directly responsible for the criminal acts of those who are being arrested. So you're not going to see police officers move forward with proactive policing, let alone reactive. You end up in a physical altercation with a criminal suspect, he can end up suing you. So why would a police officer now put his life and career on the line? So that's how damaging that is.
All right, next, making it easier to prosecute police officers by lowering the legal standard from willfulness to recklessness. Let's talk about that.
Well, look, first of all, police officers by far do get prosecuted because what you see in this bill is already standard operating procedures in many states, county, state, and local police departments around the country. They have very effective internal affairs units, and if police officers willfully do something that is in violation of the law, they're prosecuted. So again, smoke and mirrors, political theater.
But now they want to change the standard to a recklessness standard. So how would that impact these cases? We would see more of them, wouldn't we?
Well, yeah, you're going to see a lot more, because what will happen is prosecutors will come forward and say that this was reckless behavior on the part of an officer. Now, just look at what happened this week. The officer who unfortunately had to take the life of that young lady who was about to commit a homicide, he would be charged with recklessness at this point under that bill. That guy wasn't reckless. So you see, it's a matter of giving prosecutors more strength to prosecute police officers than they can now. And it's tragic because, as we see, thousands of officers are leaving their departments across the country as you and I speak.
Yeah, this is a big gift to the trial lawyers, which are major Democratic Party donors, certainly. What about creating this National Police Misconduct Registry and expanding the power of the Department of Justice to conduct misconduct investigations?
Well, there's a twofold frightening element beginning to surface here, and it's something that is being talked about. It seems to me that there is a push to do away with local police departments. And you know what that means? You're going to have a national police office, a national police department. And unfortunately, that goes right down that road of socialism. I know people don't want to hear that word, but people need to wake up and realize that if you're going to have a national police force in this country, we're going down a very, very dangerous road. So local police departments are great. They're not under the control of one person. They're under the control of hundreds of police departments around the country, police chiefs, if you will. We got to keep it local, not go national.
Steve, I agree with you on the points that you just made, but they seem determined to do something. So just to play devil's advocate here, if they do anything, really, what should the federal government do? Are we talking about funding for body cameras or more training for local departments that maybe don't have resources? What should they do if they do anything at all?
Well, I've said all along that the best solution we had was community policing. Put a lot of money, a lot of funding into community policing. I authored part of the community policing programs here in New Jersey, and they worked wonderfully. Police community relations is a fact that you have your educational system in each community, your citizens on each neighborhood, your business leaders and police department working together to communicate with each other, not at each other. That's number one. And number two, you want to talk about this problem of systemic racism. I don't believe it exists, but there is systemic politicization of police departments around the country. And that is what is hurting the criminal justice system. Too much politics. Let the people in the community and the police work together. That's where the money should go.
All right. And, you know, it's one thing, Steve, for socialists in New York to handcuff and demonize cops, right? We don't like seeing that. But this is now a national level, as you pointed out earlier. If we get this wrong, do you believe that we will see a national police shortage, which would be a real crisis, by the way?
Well, we're seeing it now. Seattle, Portland, New York City, even local police departments, small ones, about 50, 60 cops. They're just leaving the profession altogether. And we're going to be in very critical condition moving forward. And I really hope to God we don't come to a point where we're not going to have police forces left and then the National Guard moves in. That is the fear. And let's try to stay away from that and defend the police, not defund the police.
Steve Rogers, thank you for being here and your analysis of the bill and standing up for our nation's cops.
Thank you. Appreciate it.